On July 16th, something sacred returns. A moment hidden in the Church's calendar, often forgotten by the world, but known to heaven. This is not just another feast day. It is a portal, a divine appointment, and Pope Leo, a pontiff marked by visions and spiritual discernment, understood what many have yet to realize. There are specific objects that, when blessed on this day, carry unusual graces. Their power is not symbolic. It is real, because when heaven opens a window, those who prepare receive more than protection. They receive purpose. July 16th is the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, but to grasp its magnitude, one must first understand what the scapular truly signifies. It is not jewelry. It is not tradition, for tradition's sake. It is a mantle, a spiritual shield. The Blessed Virgin promised that whoever dies wearing it would not suffer eternal fire. This is not metaphor. This is promise. And Pope Leo XIII, whose devotion to the Brown Scapular was unwavering, saw the deeper meaning. He declared that the scapular is not only Marian protection, it is Marian mission. He knew something the rest of the world didn't, and it wasn't just about the scapular. According to preserved documents and spiritual testimonies surrounding his papacy, he believed certain physical objects, when blessed specifically on July 16th, become conduits of grace, not superstition, not idolatry, but matter touched by heaven for man's sanctification. These were more than recommendations. For Pope Leo, they were spiritual instructions. And the first of these sacred items is, of course, the Brown Scapular. Not only should it be worn, it should be blessed on this exact day. Why? Because July 16th is a date sealed by the Queen of Heaven herself. On that day in 1251, the Blessed Virgin appeared to St. Simon Stock with the scapular in her hands, and it was Pope Leo XIII who re-emphasized that this was not a medieval pious moment. It was a directive, a call to arms for the faithful. When the scapular is blessed on July 16th, the Church's liturgy aligns perfectly with heaven's generosity. Pope Leo believed it multiplied its efficacy, strengthening the spiritual armor of the soul, not because the Church is superstitious, but because God sanctifies time. He made the Sabbath holy. He made the feasts holy. He speaks through seasons. He responds to devotion that understands divine timing. So the faithful who wait for this day, who prepare their scapulars, who receive the blessing with full awareness, are not performing ritual, they are entering covenant. That's why Pope Leo urged bishops and priests to encourage the faithful not only to wear the scapular, but to receive a fresh blessing on July 16th, if possible. Not to repeat what's already been done, but to respond again to grace when it pours more abundantly. But Pope Leo's insight went further. Because he understood spiritual warfare, he saw what others missed. In his famous vision, when he reportedly overheard Satan being granted a century to try and destroy the Church, he was not paralyzed. He composed the St. Michael prayer. He called for the rosary, and he listed 5 sacred items to be blessed, especially on certain feast days. Among them, July 16th. The second item, holy water. But not ordinary holy water, blessed casually on any day. Pope Leo taught that when holy water is blessed on Mount Carmel's feast day, it becomes a shield with sharper edges. He explained that sacramentals carry the weight of the prayers surrounding them, and on days when heaven leans in, those prayers stretch farther. July 16th then becomes a spiritual opportunity to bless your home's holy water again, to let your family use it with renewed devotion, to sprinkle it not only on thresholds and doorways, but also on hearts. The enemy does not fear furniture. He fears water united to faith, water claimed by prayer, water sealed by Our Lady's mantle. And Pope Leo insisted that parents should be the spiritual gatekeepers of their homes. that they must bless their homes intentionally on feast days, that they must understand demons do not wait until we are ready. They wait until we are careless. This is why the Pope was never casual about objects, because sacramentals are not magic, they are spiritual weapons, but only when understood, only when used with faith, only when blessed in rhythm with the Church's divine calendar. July 16th is not about checking boxes, it's about alignment. A soul, a church, a home aligned with heaven's generosity. The third object, Pope Leo emphasized, though often forgotten by modern households, is the crucifix. Not just any crucifix, but one chosen deliberately, with reverence for display in the home or worn on the person. He taught that the crucifix is not a decoration, it is a declaration. And when blessed on a feast day like July 16th, it carries renewed authority. Why the crucifix? Because it is the ultimate contradiction, a symbol of death turned into the source of life, a Roman tool of execution transformed into the Church's banner of hope. Pope Leo once stated that the mere sight of a crucifix should awaken repentance and fear in the hearts of demons. But for that to happen, it must be honored, not ignored. He urged families to elevate the crucifix again, literally and spiritually. Hang it where the eyes rest often, not in the corner behind books or hidden behind glass. Let it dominate the walls. Let it speak silently where words fail. And on July 16th, when the Church contemplates the Virgin Mary as both mother and warrior, the crucifix takes on even greater meaning. For it was Mary who stood at the foot of the cross, not as a bystander, but as co-sufferer. Pope Leo saw in her the perfect companion to the crucified Christ. He called her the ark beneath the tree. And on Mount Carmel's feast, when we reflect on her victories, we remember that all of them flow from the cross. Blessing a crucifix on this day is not just about piety, it is about recognition. That victory was already won, and our task is to remain near the place where it happened. A blessed crucifix is a sword, and in the hands of the faithful, it is unstoppable. But Leo's insights did not stop at what one hangs or carries. He turned attention also to what sanctifies the atmosphere itself. That brings us to the fourth object, blessed incense. To many, incense is symbolic, but to Pope Leo, it was practical. He believed that when incense is blessed specifically on Marian feasts, like July 16th, it takes on a dual nature. It purifies and it defends. Incense rises, and Leo often spoke of it as the smoke of surrender. It is a reminder that our prayers ascend when offered with sincerity, but he also saw incense as a repellent. Just as certain aromas drive out pests, sacred incense blessed and offered drives out spiritual pollution. Demons hate purity, they despise beauty, and when a home is filled with the fragrance of sanctity, they retreat. Pope Leo recommended that homes keep incense not only for liturgical settings, but for private devotion. He advised lighting it during Rosary, especially on Marian feast days, and letting the house be saturated with prayer, not just said, but seen, heard, smelled. Because the soul is not the only part of us that prays. Our senses pray too. Incense is not to be used casually, but consciously. The faithful who bless it on July 16th, then offer it before crucifix or Marian image, are building an invisible fortress. They are placing their homes under heaven's breath. And finally, the fifth sacred object, perhaps the most accessible and yet the most overlooked, salt. Pope Leo referred to it as the ancient guardian. Salt has been used since the earliest days of Scripture as a symbol of purity, preservation, and covenant. You are the salt of the earth, Christ said. But Leo believed this wasn't just metaphor. He taught that blessed salt, used properly, is a silent warrior. When blessed on a Marian feast, especially July 16th, it becomes more than a trace of ancient practice. it becomes a line of defense. Salt sprinkled at thresholds, salt in holy water fonts, salt used during house blessings. These are not superstitions. These are declarations. We belong to Christ. This home is under heaven's reign. This ground is not neutral. Pope Leo insisted that priests explain the power of blessed salt to the laity. He believed that homes should be stocked with it, not hoarded, but honored. He saw it as a humble sign, ignored by many, but devastating to evil. And when combined with the prayers of Our Lady's feast, it stands like a wall. So these 5 objects, Brown Scapular, holy water, crucifix incense, and blessed salt, are not random. They are specific, strategic, spiritual instruments that Pope Leo identified as crucial for this moment in time. He believed that on July 16th, during the month of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, these objects receive not only a blessing, but a commission. They are sent into our lives, into our homes, into the battlefield that is modern culture. To bless these items without understanding their weight is to waste an invitation. But to bless them in full awareness is to participate in a spiritual preparation most of the world overlooks. Pope Leo didn't issue this council as poetry. He saw what was coming: a century of confusion, families torn, faith mocked, truth relativized, and he knew the faithful would need more than good intentions. They would need weapons. Pope Leo was not a fearful man, but he was not naive either. He saw with clarity what was slowly invading the world: a coldness of heart, a loss of reverence, and above all, a forgetfulness of the sacred. This forgetfulness, he warned, would not come in the form of open rebellion, but in distraction. People would not stop believing out of hatred. They would stop believing out of neglect. And that is why he insisted on sacramentals. Because while doctrines are defended in councils and pulpits, sacramentals are defended in homes, in kitchens, in bedrooms, in morning routines. They remind us silently and steadily that the unseen world is more real than the one we touch, that angels are not fiction, that spiritual battles are not optional. Pope Leo believed that every Catholic home should function like a domestic monastery, not with cloistered silence, but with spiritual rhythm. A place where the sacred is not confined to Sunday, a place where children see signs that their house is under divine order, where the crucifix is kissed, not ignored, where holy water is used, not forgotten, in a dusty bottle. He spoke often of what he called visible faith, not showmanship, but faith that manifests, because he knew that children do not learn faith from arguments, they absorb it from atmosphere. A home filled with blessed objects is not a superstition-laden house. It is a fortified place, a home that speaks even when the parents don't, that teaches even when catechisms are closed. That is why July 16th matters so deeply. It is more than a memorial. It is an annual summons, a holy interruption, a moment when heaven leans closer and the church is invited to respond. The feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel is not just about Mary's appearance to Simon's stock. It is about her ongoing intercession, her present mission, her insistence that souls be clothed with armor. The scapular is part of that armor, yes, but so is the pattern of blessing, the rhythm of holy resistance. Pope Leo spoke prophetically when he said, "The day shall come when only those who mark their homes with devotion will survive the tempests of confusion." He was not speaking of physical storms. He meant spiritual ones, ideologies, distortions, and moral erosion. So blessing these 5 objects on July 16th is not simply about reverence. It is about readiness, not panic, but preparation, not fear, but foresight. The Church does not prepare with weapons of man, but with weapons of grace. And the objects Pope Leo identified are not ornamental, they are operational. But he didn't stop with objects. He understood that their power depends on the faith that surrounds them. A crucifix without prayer is wood. A scapular without commitment is fabric. Salt without belief is seasoning. What transforms these things is the act of blessing joined to interior disposition. The Church supplies the prayer. We supply the hunger. Pope Leo emphasized that every blessing is an invitation to renewal, that when a priest blesses water or salt or a scapular, it is not a magic spell. It is a sacred transaction, a moment when heaven marks matter for divine purpose and waits for the soul to meet it with reverence. That's why he urged the faithful to prepare their hearts before bringing objects, to be blessed, to pray the rosary, to make an examination of conscience, to approach the blessing not like a routine errand, but like a moment of sacred convergence. He knew what many forget: when God is near, the soul must be awake. So if July 16 is approaching, it is not enough to simply collect the items. The soul must be ready too. Pope Leo's letters and homilies reveal a deep desire that people not only be protected externally, but that they be set ablaze internally. He believed that external symbols were invitations to internal holiness. This perhaps was his deepest insight, that the true purpose of blessed objects is to keep the soul vigilant, to remind the mind that the battle is real, that time is short, that grace is available, and that Mary, the Queen of Mount Carmel, is not a distant figure, but a mother present in every room that welcomes her. He often referenced the Old Testament story of Elijah on Mount Carmel calling down fire from heaven. He saw in it a parallel, that on this spiritual mountain, the modern believer must also stand, not to call down literal fire, but to beg for spiritual fire, for purity, for courage, for clarity. In a world of compromise, Carmel remains a place of confrontation, and every object blessed on this day becomes a token of that confrontation, a reminder that the Christian life is not adrift, it is a decision, that our homes are not just living spaces, they are strongholds, that our faith is not private nostalgia, it is a public stand. This is what Pope Leo taught, and this is what July 16th asks us to remember. As July 16th approaches, the call becomes urgent, not in panic, but in purpose. The Church does not mark feast days out of nostalgia. It marks them because heaven still works through time. God has always sanctified moments. He chose a night for the Exodus, a dawn for the resurrection, a specific hour for Pentecost, and now the month of July, especially its 16th day, belongs to the Virgin of Mount Carmel. Pope Leo knew this, and more importantly, he wanted the faithful to know it. He didn't speak only to clergy or theologians. He spoke to mothers, to fathers, to workers, to the forgotten and the faithful. He reminded them that grace doesn't only visit cathedrals. It enters kitchens, workshops, quiet corners of quiet homes. It sanctifies saltwood cloth and water, not because those things are holy in themselves, but because God delights in entering the ordinary to do the extraordinary. That is why this devotion to the 5 sacred objects is not superstition. It is not magic. It is not blind ritual. It is the Church's long memory meeting the believer's deep hunger. It is heaven making itself touchable through the sacraments and reinforcing the everyday through sacramentals. Those who hear this call must act, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, but now. Begin gathering the objects: the Brown Scapular holy water, a crucifix blessed incense, and blessed salt. Take them to a priest. Ask for the blessing specifically on July 16th, if possible. If not, unite your intention to the feast with full heart. Heaven knows when desire is pure, and once they are blessed, do not store them away. Use them. Incorporate them into your family rhythm. Let the scapular rest on your chest, not in a drawer. Let the holy water be at your doorway. Let the crucifix hang over the bed or near the dining table. Let the incense burn during prayer. Let the salt be sprinkled not only in meals, but on thresholds, in corners, near windows, because these are not accessories. They are declarations. Each one speaks without words, Each one claims ground. Each one says this house belongs to God. This soul belongs to Mary. This family stands under heaven's light. Pope Leo never promised that using these objects would prevent every suffering, but he did promise they would protect the soul. They would fortify the home. They would mark a person as aware as awake, as aligned with the sacred in a world quickly forgetting it. He once wrote, "The greatest danger of modern times is not war, it is forgetfulness of the sacred." And so we remember. We remember Mary, who gave the scapular. We remember Elijah, who called down fire. We remember Christ, who hung on the cross. We remember the saints who blessed water and salt and oil and bread, not as rituals, but as resistance. And we remember Pope Leo, who looked ahead and saw the fog we now live in, and who offered us more than warnings, he gave us tools. So, as July 16th rises once again on the Church's calendar, let it not pass as an ordinary Tuesday or a forgotten feast. Let it be what heaven intended, a spiritual reset, a Marian, commissioning a renewal of personal consecration. Let it be the day you walk into your parish with 5 simple items and walk out with 5 weapons. Let it be the day your home becomes a sanctuary. Let it be the day you remember you are not alone, not unarmed, not abandoned. You are covered. You are called. You are Carmel bound.